Branson, how you doing this morning?
I'm all right. How about yourself, sir?
No complaints so far, anyway. Still early.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Uh, how, how hard is it to get a drink into the stores?
Um, well, it really depends on the drink in the stores, right?
Hmm.
You know, um, there are others who could help, I think, in the group, but in general, um, some stores are looking for something new and different. Others are looking for alternatives to what they offer. It really varies all over the place. And also what type of store, right? Like a natural channel like Whole Foods is different than, Kroger, for example. So it's kind of hard to generalize, but it's not easy. I mean, only a small percentage of brands get on the shelf. Hi, Andy. How are you?
Good, good. How about you, Dennis?
Bro, doing good, thanks. I'm just trying to answer a question. Branson asked about how hard is it to get a drink on the shelves of grocery stores. So I'm rambling incessantly. So maybe you could
Well,
add more to the discussion than me. Hey, Jesse, how are you?
me and my team have came up with a CBD drink, and it has three sizes. It's a 4 milliliter shot, a 2 ounce drink that you can make like your own, then a 4 ounce. But the effects of it is like it's an alternative for liquor, and you put it in your drink, and it feels like you've had liquor, but you haven't. You just had CBD. So we're trying to figure out how to market that into the stores as an alternative to liquor.
So one of the key things is, are you wanting to go foot forward with the brand, or the foot forward with this is an expansion of the drinks category? If you would be the first that offers this benefit, and it makes a real difference in terms of the strategy that you want to use to be able to get your drink picked up. Another thing that's super helpful if it's a new extension of drinks is if you can get one store to do it, then you can say, well, this other store is started. You're still on the leading edge, but you're not the first. A lot of retailers don't like to be the first and take a risk. So those are just a couple of my top of mind thoughts.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, hey, Andy, thanks for joining us today. And folks will keep streaming in here, but we know we want to be sensitive to your time, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Let me see if I can. I made you co-host. Hopefully, you can deal with that. Is that true? Is that working?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll pop slides up in a couple of moments when we get rolling.
Okay, fantastic. So everybody, meet Andy, our friend and my friend, and a wonderful person to know in the CPG space. He's worked for many of the major brands that you've heard, and I'll let you hear what he has to say and hear a little bit more about his background. But Andy, I met Andy a long time ago when he was working at Clorox, and he since that time went ahead and purchased Burt's Bees for Clorox. He was the executive in charge of the Clorox team that did that. Uh, he's also just a hell of a nice guy. I mean, there's in a lot of cases, and I don't mean to make Andy blush, but sometimes when you deal with big companies and big brands, the people you run across, especially if you're kind of a small upstart, they're not necessarily the nicest people in the world. And Andy is very encouraging and very supportive of new ideas. He's made a career out of finding um, small CPG brands and bringing them, I call them bringing them to the major leagues in many different ways. But I wanted to really welcome him. He's one of the stalwarts of this program, and he's even been to Greenville, which I find amazing. Not many
It's a
people.
great place. Are you kidding?
It is, but it isn't common that people go to Greenville. So anyway, with no further ado, let me introduce my friend Andy Gilicinski. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, like I always do, but Andy is going to help us understand what's going on in the CPG and how it might apply to you. Andy, take it away.
Dennis, thanks so much. If you all don't mind, I'd love to start by just going around and getting a quick intro from each of you, so I have a sense for the kind of categories, the kind of branding, the kind of work you're doing in your entrepreneurial careers, and then that'll let me sort of emphasize certain aspects of the discussion more effectively and make it as relevant as possible for all of us. So how about if somebody jumps in and does a
Branson, why don't you
elevator?
start? I'm just going to go in order on my screen here. So Branson, why don't you start?
I'm Branson Edwards. I'm a music producer, urban content creator. I also have a CBD brand, a clothing brand, and I also make in a digital radio and podcasting studio. So I use that to try to launch brands and other brands around me. So that's what I do.
Very cool, Brandon. Pleasure to meet you.
All right,
Pleasure to
Con,
meet you, sir.
you're next on my hit parade. Con.
I got you. We're Kai Bateman. We're a family-owned artesian snack and sweet company. We provide nut-filled comfort foods that people have a connection with.
Very
I'm
cool.
so proud of Kai, man. You should have heard his explanation before he took the class, right? All right, Sarah's next.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Andy. Thanks for connecting with me on LinkedIn as well. And looking forward to the talk today. I'm the founder of Cirilla, which is an alcohol-free, better-for-you beverage, currently sold in cans, in grocery, and online, and also on tap in bars and breweries.
Fantastic. Great to meet you live.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Tia, you want to give your background?
Hi, Andy. My name is Tia Jones. I'm the CEO and founder of a nonprofit organization here in Pitt County called In Her Beauty Movement Incorporation. Our mission is to equip, empower, and encourage young ladies, preferably teenagers, to become the best version of themselves while pursuing higher education. And we do so by hosting our annual Purity Prom event, where we give out school supplies and we bring mental health in. And we have keynote speakers to kind of empower them to be successful and continue to be the best version of themselves.
Fantastic.
Tia's on staff at ECU also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lucky
Lisa.
to have her.
Yeah, I agree.
Hi, Andy, thanks for being here. I own Cafe Fruta Fresca Gelato. We manufacture all natural gelato and sorbet. We're doing an expansion right now, building a bigger factory so we can produce 1,600 pints per hour, 1,500 gelato pops per hour, and building an agribusiness around it as well so we can grow our own produce for our product and also wholesale and do the farm to school.
One of my favorite foods. Great to meet you.
All right. Jess Wilkinson.
Hi, everyone. Good to meet you. I work for NC Growth. We're an economic development nonprofit center at UNC Chapel Hill. And so I work with a lot of small businesses and communities on economic development. And some of those projects have been around shared commercial kitchens. And one of them is in the realm of consumer packaged goods. So I just wanted to come here and learn.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jess, for coming.
Awesome.
Jenny Hill.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. I am Jenny, and I am a fourth-year PhD student at UNC Chapel Hill, and I am studying economic development and entrepreneurship.
Fantastic. All right. Well, and you got a lot of smart people here, buddy, so be careful what you say.
Oh my gosh, I better up my game. So, fantastic. Great to meet you all. Let me go ahead and pop on a set of slides that I have prepared for our discussion, and I have left a PDF version of this with Dennis, so it is available for you. Basically, to kick it off, My name, of course, is Andy. I have been in industry for 35 years. 20 of it was working for large consumer packaged goods companies, starting with Gillette, then Clorox, Georgia Pacific, and SC Johnson. The last two were private companies. I was an officer of those companies, running R&D and working in a really cross-functional way with marketing leaders. And boy, I learned so much about the marketing side, the sales side, the customer marketing to get into retailers, all the wonderful lessons you learn by being involved in a consumer brand. The thing that I was really most proud of in my career is I've launched over $500 million in year one incremental new sales of consumer products. And along the way, as Dennis mentioned, I accidentally fell into M&A and helped Clorox buy Burt's Bees for $925 million back in 2007. And a foundational experience for me was I helped run the integration team for 3 years, along with John Rapogel, the president at the time of Burt's Bees, who then went on to run Seventh Generation and sell them to Unilever, and now runs a venture capital firm trying to promote consumer brands in North Carolina. He's still in the Raleigh-Durham area, a fantastic person to get to know. And he's also been foundational in certified B corporations and just all kinds of things. So Dennis knows him now. We got them connected, and I think he would be willing to be a friend of this group as opportunities arise that you think could benefit. I decided in 2019 to retire from big companies and run my own advisory firm. I'm such an unusual background. I have a PhD in chemistry. I've done this innovation stuff in consumer goods. I've done science, and I've done M&A. And I figured there's only 10 people in the country that have that crazy combination of experience. And so now I'm just really enjoying helping companies, both serving on their boards, on 3 company boards, as well as doing consulting work for various innovation and M&A projects. What I'd love to talk about today is some of my lessons over my career in consumer goods on the role of new brands. You were all entrepreneurs with your own new companies, cool products, in some cases already on the shelves of local stores or selling online. And, the amazing power of the brands that you are building on not just your ability to create a great business, but also the impact on your consumers and the impact on the world around us. I'd like to talk this morning about the value of branding, attributes of a powerful consumer brand, and the role of new brands in consumer goods within the CPG industry. I'd like to start off with a quick discussion amongst us around what makes a valuable brand. And I have 2 slides, this one and the next one, that show the Forbes list of the biggest brands, the most valuable brands in the world from 2022. The new numbers for 23 haven't come out yet. And I'd like to just quickly walk through and see if you have thoughts on which brand you think is the most valuable out of this group. We start with all the familiar names that we know from our Silicon Valley friends, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook. As we go to the second half of the list, we start getting out of tech and into a broader range of businesses: Coca-Cola, Disney, Samsung, the luxury brand Louis Vuitton, and our own humble McDonald's that's in every town in America. And as you look at the numbers, take a look at the brand value, the number in the third column towards the middle, and the brand revenue, the column 2 over from there. And I'd love any quick shout outs on which brand you think is the most valuable in this group. And this is an art, more of an art than a science. So there's no right or wrong answers, but there is a common wisdom answer. And I'd love your thoughts and reactions.
Samsung.
Very, very good thought. Other thoughts? Any other reactions, or do you all agree Samsung's the one?
I say Apple.
There's a vote for the house that Steve Jobs built. Other
I would
thoughts?
go Disney just because it has that happy-go-lucky kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, everybody knows what that brand stands for, don't they?
Mhm.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say Disney too. It's more of, I think the idea that they're in so many different verticals. They have products, they have amusement parks, they have television, and they're just continuously innovating and expanding and reaching people at a young age. So people actually grow up with that, and they just like really tap into that joy aspect.
Love the thinking, Sarah. And you hit on something very important, just the extendability of the brand and how many verticals they can go into, how many places, touch points they can have for consumers, whether it's online streaming or visit to a park or products in a store. Any additional thoughts? Well, the common wisdom answer that has been out there for a while is the most valuable brand is the one that can take the brand value and extend it substantially beyond the brand revenue. And what do I mean by that? When you look at Apple, great answer, by the way, brand revenue, 260 billion. It's one of the most admired companies in the world, all kinds of great attributes. But the brand value is roughly similar to its brand revenue. If you contrast that, for example, with Amazon, their revenue is almost twice the calculation, and it's a rough calculation of the brand value. That suggests that, consumers are, of course, buying a lot from Amazon, but they may not necessarily value the brand itself. For example, Amazon Basics was kind of a budget brand that they came out with for their own kind of store brand, internally manufactured or sourced products. People don't think they're as valuable as the branded stuff that comes from companies like Apple and Dell and others. Disney, very powerful brand. You'll notice the revenue and the brand value almost double the revenue. That speaks for exactly what Sarah was mentioning, the extendability of the brand, the greater likelihood that they can get shelf placement at a store, that consumers will automatically assume all kinds of positive things about a product that they have. Samsung is a fascinating case. Look at their revenue, over 200 billion, and yet the calculation of the brand value is only a quarter of that. What's going on there? And the common wisdom around Samsung is they make great technology, but they aren't valued for that technology just because it's got the Samsung name on it. And, if you look at an iPhone versus a Samsung Galaxy phone, the Samsung name doesn't draw you as much as the tech inside. And so the power of the brand is not as strong as clearly the power of the company itself. The common wisdom, the most valuable brand in the world is Coca-Cola. And I will actually challenge that, but their brand revenue or their revenue for their company is around 25 billion. The brand value is thought to be almost 2.5 times that. And the way that comes out is the shelf placement, the likelihood a consumer is going to pick them over a competitor just because of the brand itself. I would actually argue that Louis Vuitton, which is over 3 times the brand value of their revenue, is actually a more valuable brand if you think of it just as a lift of the power of the brand versus the revenue. But historically, in recent years, Coca-Cola has been thought of as the world's most valuable brand. And some of the attributes that have helped this brand become so valuable are its consistency and the iconic way that its brand trademarks, the name, the cursive writing for the name, the shape of the bottle, those have been around for over 100 years. You can see at the top, by about 1905, the cursive look of the Coca-Cola logo, pretty close to what we see today. And they've kept it up consistently throughout over a century. On the bottom left, the pictures of the bottles, pretty much by early 1900s, they got about to the shape that they're at today. And they protect that, they celebrate that, and they continue to show that as an example at the bottom right. within their advertising, within their consumer communications, within the way that they show and market. So one of the things that's really fascinating is the importance of consistency and investment in the brand. That's one of the key elements that helps grow brand value. Just pause for any comments. Anybody surprised that Coca-Cola being on top?
It's just proof that people say they want to be healthy, but they don't necessarily act that way.
It is amazing, the ability to just have a consistent message that just attracts people. It's impressive what you can sell if you've got a really powerful brand. So one thing that
Andy, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just kind of a stray thought that jumped out at me, because I think when I see Coca-Cola, I automatically think of Pepsi. Do you want to just kind of contrast that a little bit, just without getting into too much detail?
Pepsi has a very powerful brand as well. They obviously didn't make the top 10 list. And they have relied on their sweeter taste. In fact, Coke was feeling nervous about it. You all, I'm sure, have heard about the new Coke debacle, where they came out with a sweeter version that was more Pepsi-like. And the interesting thing about that is they consumer tested that by giving people sips of the new soda with crackers in between. And with those short sips, consumers preferred the new Coke. When they drank the whole bottle, it was just too much. They tested it in a way that didn't mimic actual consumer use. And when people actually started buying it and drinking the whole can or bottle, they don't like it as much. And there's speculation about whether, bringing out classic Coke as a reaction to that. Gosh, this is an old story now. So hopefully some of you remember this or have heard about this. They brought out the classic Coke, and that actually gave them SKU expansion, which gave them more shelf presence on the store. And there was speculation that maybe they did the botched Coke launch on purpose, as a way of being able to get another brand out there and kind of slip it in as, under the guise of a reaction to a failed launch. But those are some of my thoughts about Pepsi, Dennis. Great question. So
Okay.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. Have you all seen the Simon Sinek, what does your brand stand for, kind of the power of why video yet?
It's our first class. So yeah,
Awesome.
we're into what is your why?
That is great. That is great, because that is one of the key elements. And in the video, as you recall, everybody talks about the what. I make computers, want to buy one. And then there's the how. Well, we make them a certain way, we source materials a certain way, we get it to you in a certain way. Our packaging is really cool. There's lots of companies that celebrate the how they do things. But as Simon said so eloquently in the Puget Sound TED Talk that you saw at the beginning, few companies talk about the why, what they believe in, what's their mission. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I just wanted to reference Simon and make sure that concept was familiar to you. What I'd like to do is talk now about a couple of newer brands. When you talk about Coca-Cola and Apple and all these giants, it kind of feels hard for us as entrepreneurs, to reach such lofty heights. And I'd like to talk about a couple of examples, starting with the humble example of mac and cheese. There was a time when, back in the 1990s, when you wanted mac and cheese, you saw the blue and yellow row of Kraft mac and cheese that old people like me grew up with as kids, and just dominated the aisle. And back in 1989, a very visionary young woman, Annie Withy, came up with this idea that that mac and cheese from Kraft looks like it's got some kind of neon food coloring in there. It doesn't look healthy or good for you. They don't talk about their ingredients. They don't talk about why this food is nourishing. And she had a different idea. And her why is shown in the middle of the slide here on the right. And a mission to cultivate a healthier, happier world by spreading goodness through nourishing foods. She just had this ethos around it. And, it's funny, people have all kinds of seals of approval and things like that. She came up with her rabbit of approval and then shifted that to the bunny of approval. And, did the bunny shaped mac and cheese. And she started literally selling the stuff out of a station wagon. And going up and down in the Boston, Connecticut, New England area, trying to get small grocers to take her product. And she got some traction and began getting more and more popular. And she ended up doing some successful fundraising in the 90s and 2000s, really began to fuel growth and distribution. And in 2012, actually went public. And 2 years later, for billions of dollars, General Mills bought the brand. And now, today, I think last November, I went to the food store and just confirmed it for myself. If you look at the mac and cheese aisle or section of the grocery store, Kraft is now got less shelf space than Annie's. And to me, it's a testament that, you don't have to be some fancy high-tech computer company with, phones and iPods and crazy things like that to be able to change the world and make a huge impact, even in the most humble of categories. So I love this example. Anybody on this call a fan of Annie's? And any?
Yes.
All right, Sarah's.
Although I think, Andy, I just want to underline a point that you just made without blabbing on too much. We get so much information about all these tech companies that are, attracting venture capital and the best and brightest, that's what they want to go into. But this is one example, and I've known Andy for a while, so I actually know more than one example. But for all of you here, I don't know if you've really thought about just how much you can change the world with what you're doing. I love the bunny of approval. I mean, this is fun, right? She's having fun. I'm not saying it's easy, but her approach is fun. And now, of course, it's General Mills. It's a whole different ballgame. But I just want to underline the point that Andy just made is you do not have to be Apple or Facebook or TikTok or whatever to really make an impact, both, on the world as a greater whole, but also on yourself and your family. So this is something that doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion. I know I'm crazy and always say, you all can do this. You really can. And this is a concrete example of that. So, okay, that's all I had to say.
Fantastic point, Dennis. And just I think a reflection of your point is when you look at the package, when you look at the brand, when you look at how they talk about themselves, you can feel the passion of the entrepreneur that created this, that believes in this. You can tell she's got a why. She's got a why that matters. And it's one that people can connect with. And, it feels like a humble act, but people are making a choice when they reach for Annie's homegrown bunny pasta with yummy cheese. I mean, it's connecting with where people's beliefs are and how they view the world. And that is what I think Annie has done very successfully with her brand. And again, was reinforcing it can be very humble things, but you can make a difference in a corner of the world that could use a change. And I'm a big believer that companies can do real good in this world. Growing up, there's always this narrative that big bad corporations, but you're all entrepreneurs, that a company could do good because you are trying to do good. And it's really a wonderful attribute of your brand to let that shine through. Here's another. Oh, sure. Please, okay. Lisa.
My brand, Cafe Fruit of Fresco Gelato, our logo is a heart with the fruit of the spirit words around it. It's a fruit-filled heart, and we have them on the top of each pint of our gelato and sorbet. And our mission is to spread love all over the world, one pint at a time, while helping to stop human trafficking. And we donate a portion of sales to organizations like Operation Underground Railroad that are actively going in saving children from human trafficking. So.
That is super cool. I think that is a beautiful part of your brand, Lisa. And I applaud you for letting people know that right on the top of your product. That is awesome. That is awesome.
I have a question. Were you part of the process, or did you observe what the response from Kraft was when Annie's first started disrupting that category and starting to acquire market share?
That is a great question, Sarah. I do not know what their reaction was. I wasn't watching it at that time. But the typical story is denial. It's a fringe. It's not that important. Followed by, we got to stay true to our brand. If we believe in our brand, then we should just ignore what competitors are doing and keep playing our playbook. It's gotten us this far. It's made us this successful. And then when it starts creeping up more and more, it's like the boiling frog thing. At some point, somebody decides, we got trouble. And that's where companies really go one of two paths. One path is kind of the quick fix reactions, try to use market power, try to adjust their messaging just a little bit, different kind of quick fix things. The other path, which I'm a big fan of, is taking a fundamental look at, do they have a successful recipe? And I mean that in a general way for their brand that is fundamentally putting us at risk of becoming obsolete. How do we address that? Do we change our brand? Or do we create our own new brand? Or is there some other strategy? Or do we buy any? What? And really addressing it head up. Because one of the risks, especially at big successful companies, is they are incented to keep doing what they're doing. And they have been rewarded for doing what they've been doing to bring them to the point that they're at. And the challenge is sometimes, and I'll share a secret with you. Sometimes when you're working at a big company, you got a great job, you got kids that like to eat dinner and you want to feed them and have a house over their roof over their head and everything else. And sometimes giving bad news is something people don't want to hear. And sometimes the fear is greater than the actual reality. Sometimes people want somebody that feels ownership over a brand to come and say, we're at risk. Let's talk about this. I've analyzed this and I think this could be a long-term threat to our brand. Very few people have both the sort of strategic mind and the personal courage to put their career on the line, or at least the perceived risk of putting their career on the line, to really push for a more fundamental response versus sort of quick fix type of responses when a competitive threat like this is happening. So it's a great question, Sarah. There's no ultimate answer to it, but I'll tell you, very real human emotions from people working at companies that don't want to lose their jobs and fear career harm by, sounding like they're doom and glooming on this brilliant brand that we've built that's so profitable. It's a hard call to make. And it's a rare person that's both strategic enough and courageous enough to blow the whistle and say, time out, we need to fix this. So, and that's why, and that gives you all tremendous opportunity, because Kraft was asleep at the wheel. And that's a quote that I use deliberately from a slide that's coming in one or two slides. And Annie's was benefiting from that. Another example of taking on, how about if we compete with Gillette and blades and razors? What the heck? This example is just about 10 years old. I'm going to get into some more and more recent examples to help illustrate that this isn't just something that happened 20 or 50 years ago. This is happening today, and you can do it, just like Dennis said. Harry's started in 2013, and basically the why on the bottom left was almost, I would paraphrase it as, we want to be the anti-Gillette. Gillette had put out their 5-blade razor. There were jokes on Saturday Night Live about the 20-blade razor. People just it almost became a joke, like these things are overbuilt. And the founders of Harry's tried to play on that. They were like, you know what? These are overbuilt. We must be overpaying for them. How about something that's just high quality, simple, and does the job? I mean, how complicated is shaving anyway? And these founders kicked it off 10 years ago. At that time, Schick and Gillette had 90% of the market. Talk about a monopoly. Initial sales were all direct to consumer. They scraped the money together to buy a factory in Germany to be able to make their blades. And they began growing a really successful direct to consumer business. Somewhere along the way, I think in 2017 or 18, they began getting distribution in brick and mortar retail. And by 2019, they had gained 7% market share. And at that time, Edgewell, which had just divested Energizer batteries, and they were down to about 2 billion in sales, a shadow of what they had been. They were looking at obsolescence. And as a company, they decided, you know what? Maybe direct to consumer is the way to go in the future. These people seem to have figured it out. Let's buy them. And a key attribute of the acquisition was the Harry's people were going to take over the management team of a $2 billion traditional consumer goods company. It was just a crazy thing. It's almost like the inmates are taking over the asylum. However, the deal was blocked by the Federal Trade Commission. It was kind of rumored that P&G pushed that. And so Harry's remains an independent company today, roughly 350 million in revenue. And at the bottom right is this woolly mammoth logo, and it's kind of their playful logo that just they really celebrated, especially in their early years, that showed their playfulness of the brand, that they're not taking themselves too seriously, that it again supported their why around these aren't overbuilt, these are just the basic things, come by us. So this is a fascinating story. It's also a story on timing. There's a theory that because they got into Target and Walmart, the FTC thought, you know what, Harry's is big enough to help provide competition in the market, and combining them with Schick will actually reduce competition in blades and razors. If they had gone 2 years earlier, they probably could have pulled off that sale to Edgewell. It's just a fascinating story all around. I don't know if any of you are fans of Harry's or know people that are fans of Harry's.
I subscribe to them. I like their blades. I just think and if you notice on that picture, the blade's not nearly as wide as some of the others. And I've got this little place in my shower where that fits perfectly. So that's my story. And I just think it's very convenient to get it in the mail. Although I must have been figuring out the timing. You got to work on it because you could end up with a huge warehouse full of razor blades.
That's right. That's right. And again, it's a very different model, and it's one that really plays well with something that's a reproducible behavior. Most men that shave, they're not going to wonder, gee, in 2024, am I going to be still shaving? Of course they are. And so it just makes it a very convenient thing. And it was very new at the time. Gillette's, when I worked at Gillette, they had about 85% dollar share in the market. It was amazing. They were printing money. The lavishness of that company, the perks they had, we'll never see that again in corporate America. And today they're down to 50% market share. It's just amazing how these upstarts, in this case, less than 10 years old, have nibbled away at their market dominance.
One
Next
thing
example.
I do want to take just one quick point, Andy. The previous slide where you talked about the bunny for the cheese, Annie's, and then this one with the woolly mammoth. I just want to point out, and we've talked about this a little bit in class. I think I talked about it particularly with that company Nerdy Nuts when I talked about their graphics and their position. Notice the attempt to be more human, but less corporate, less buttoned down and perfect. I mean, that drawing of that woolly mammoth looks like I did it. So
it looks like my kid did it.
Yeah. So I just think there's a lesson there for brands, that this ability to connect with consumers and truthfully, especially in this case of Harry's, they're a direct-to-consumer brand primarily. That's how they started. It's really not about dominating the shelf, although I'm sure they'll get to that point. But this connectivity with the consumers through fun graphics, I think, makes a lot of sense to me. So anyway,
very cool. Jenny, you raised your hand.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I had a question. So you've talked about some brands like Burt's Bees, Annie's, Seventh Generation, and all of these different brands I used before and after their acquisition. And I was wondering if you could speak to the dilution of maybe that why that they experience. Like, for example, Seventh Generation no longer offers their compostable dryer sheets because their desire was to help the environment, but now they no longer offer a product that would have been really beneficial. And then with Annie's, they used to be a corn-free product. And now since their acquisition, they have added corn to their ingredients. I was just wondering if you could speak to, I don't know, maybe the risks of being acquired.
That's a great point, Jenny. Those risks are very real. I think a great example of the buyer of Seventh Generation is Unilever. And you may all have seen over the last 2 years some controversy about their ice cream brand that they purchased back in 2010, Ben & Jerry's. They have been a very activist brand. They had a very controversial position on not selling ice cream in the West Bank in the Middle East. And that was contrary to Unilever's position and their relationship with the Israeli government, the Israeli economy. And I think that was a great example where, at least in that case, they were trying to stay true to the ethos that Ben & Jerry's had. On the other hand, exactly as you say, one of the key products at Seventh Generation was dropped. I noticed they're not as activist against chlorine bleach as they were back in the day when they were independent. How much of that is they're trying to reduce a little bit of the friction between them and some of the other brands that Unilever has in the home cleaning space, or how much of it is completely independent, truly coincidental decisions, that maybe the sales of those dryer sheets have been plummeting, and nobody wanted them anymore. And for whatever reason, competitive opportunity, or they didn't work as well, or whatever it might be. So it's a case by case basis, I think. I know for a fact in the acquisition of Burt's Bees, Clorox made the decision, and my job co-leading the integration team was to protect the company from all the folks in Clorox's headquarters that wanted to come out and check it out and impose on them, gift them with the wonderful corporate processes that a $6 billion company had. And, frankly, it would have overwhelmed the company. And the temptation to now, let's use the same raw materials that we buy so much of for Pine Sol, and change the product just a little bit. They won't notice too much. We resisted that actively while I was on that integration team. Over time, those temptations to get scale or shift things a little bit to be more in line with the broader corporation, those pressures are there. And to me, Jenny, the real answer to your question is it depends on the intent and the commitment that the acquiring corporation has and the longevity of that commitment. Management can change. CEO has changed, I think, twice with Unilever since Ben & Jerry's was acquired and Seventh Generation were acquired, I think only once since Seventh Generation. And you're kind of depending on the corporate board, the corporate leadership of the acquiring company to still believe and still want to stay true to the ethos of the company that's acquired. It's a very real concern. And if you care about your brand, which I know you all do, that'll be something you'll be thinking about at some point if you decide that you want to sell or recapitalize or something else that gives up part or all of the control of your company's brand to somebody else. So great question, Jenny. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I also think that it's important to think about, whether the founders or the original team is going to stay or leave, right? Obviously, in most acquisition type situations, the people move on, not uncommon, of course, probably more frequently. But I think there are some examples, and I'm sorry, I don't have them right off the top of my head, where the visionary stayed or the leader stayed. And in some cases, depending on the type of organization that bought them, sometimes you see organizations that are tangentially involved in the space, right? They're not really in that space. And so they buy something because they want to get into that space. Many times in that type of situation, that founding team will stay at least for a while because the people who bought them actually know less about the space than they do. So I think it's important to think about, who
that's exactly right, Dennis.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. What's that?
Yeah, that is an outstanding point. And actually one of the the things that made Clorox an attractive acquirer for Burt's Bees. The people within Burt's Bees told us afterwards they were cheering us on because some of the other candidates for acquisition, Clairol, Avon, they knew about their space. They knew Clorox didn't know about their space and was more likely to leave them alone and honor what they wanted to do. So
Yeah. Right.
that is an excellent point and a very real dynamic. So, and by the way, for Burt's Bees, the initial sale to a private equity firm, the owner, Roxanne Quimby, kept 20%. She bought out Burt Chavitz and she kept 20%. And that helped both her participate in the brand more actively when the private equity firm owned it before they sold it to Clorox. And she actually made more on her 20% sale when it flipped to Clorox than she did on her initial sale of the 80% share to the private equity firm. So if you believe in your brand, hang on to a part of it. And the acquirer will often welcome that because that's a sign that you have confidence in it and you'll stay involved and engaged in it. And those are all valuable things. A more recent example, this one started out just 8 years ago. It's a really dorky story, but the why in this case was a couple of guys living in an apartment in Chicago. Their main diet was beer and burritos. And they found out that when they went to Cubs games, they sometimes didn't have the toileting capability they wanted in the Wrigley Field. And so they came up initially with a travel pack of wet wipes because they didn't feel like there was a good version out there. And all the marketing on wet wipes was for women. Nobody was speaking to guys. And they decided, this actually is a relevant market for guys, especially when they eat the kind of diet we have. And no one's talking to them. So let's create a brand that talks to them. So they went on Shark Tank, got some money, got their first distribution within a year. And this is from last year. They actually exceeded Charmin's wet bath tissue sales in Walmart. And I think it's just a crazy story, but they are so laser focused on their target market and building their brand to speak to that target market, even though their house seems almost irreverent. It worked. It really worked. And I think this is a really cool LinkedIn post from last summer. The chief, the CEO, the chief executive dude said, "I'll bet on passion, hunger, and authenticity every day of the week. The giants are asleep at the wheel." And, there's a lot of wisdom to that. If you've got a clear idea of an unmet need or a different way of addressing a consumer that just ain't being spoken to today, it's amazing how the successful companies just buy into their own playbook and they lose their peripheral vision on what you see so clearly. And that gives you the opportunity. So this is kind of a wonky story, but I think it's a great one that you can even compete with Procter & Gamble, one of the biggest consumer companies on the planet with their venerable brand. And last but not least, this is one where I actually helped this company last fall look at potentially selling themselves. And this was founded by a college student at UC Berkeley. She was on a date and she was nicely made up in terms of her facial makeup, her hair and everything, but her nails didn't look so great. And it's hard to believe, but apparently the guy she was at the dinner with said, you look so great, except your nails look so poorly. Like, why is that? And she was just horrified and offended. I don't think that relationship worked out. But what it made
That's
her
not
realize.
A guy. Sorry, Andy, that's not a guy. Sorry.
But it made her realize, women have to spend either $50 at a salon for decent nails or the kind of nails, press-on nails that were available at the time looked chintzy and cheap and only lasted 2 days. And she was convinced there was a better way. She found a way to build her own line, found a supplier in China that had some advantaged capabilities that allowed for really fast turn graphics and very on-trend design turnaround, began website-only sales in 2020, got into H-E-B, a grocery store in Texas, and into Target in 2021. And this brand is growing. It's on fire. It has legitimized the press on nail category, and shown in kind of in the middle of the slide. There's the quality axis on the y-axis and the cost axis on the x-axis. And basically, salon manicures are on the expensive, high-quality quadrant. Low quality, this brand called Kiss Nails, cheap, low quality, doesn't last long, doesn't look good. You know, they're affordable, but low quality. And she had to herself, this foundress, the quadrant of high quality and affordable. And so it's a great example of, you know, a category that's been around forever, not forever, but, you know, it's been around for a long, long time. She was able to see a gap, partly through her own unfortunate date experience, that she was convinced that she could take advantage of. So the opportunities, the bottom line here is the opportunities are all around us. It doesn't require a global tech company to find ways to impact consumers, create a great business, do wonderful things to create wealth for yourself and your family, and change the world for the better with your vision and your passion and your insight into what people need. And so what I'd like to just shift to is to talk a little bit about the how around branding. And again, this can be done in a number of ways. There are two flavors of the expressing the how that I find pretty helpful to think about as you're building a brand. One is to do it as a mission statement. What's your mission? What are you about? You know, we talked about Disney. A couple of you, referenced them specifically. Sarah, you had some great comments on it. Their mission is to create happiness for people of all ages everywhere. I mean, what a great mission. What a wonderful thing to be about as a company. You know, I'm local here in the Milwaukee area in Wisconsin, and nearby is Harley Davidson, founded in Milwaukee. Their mission is to fulfill dreams of personal all-American freedom. You know, it's a mission that doesn't attract everybody for sure, but for the kind of consumers, the customers that Harley wants to attract, it speaks to them and it helps them define themselves to the world. So a mission statement is one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to go even deeper and talk about beliefs. Like, I'm not even going to talk about what I'm here to do to refresh the world, inspire moments of optimism and happiness, as Coca-Cola says. I'm going to talk just about what I fundamentally believe. And at that deeper level, there are a couple of great examples that I find inspirational. One that I think just knocks me in the middle of the head is Nike's. We believe if you have a body, you're an athlete. You know, I don't know about all of you, but I've never thought of myself as an athlete. What an aspirational thing to lay out as a fundamental belief of the company that makes you take notice and say, holy cow, maybe I should think of myself more as an athlete. Maybe I should be more active. You know, it's an inspirational as well as an aspirational belief. Tesla's is really interesting. We believe the world needs to transition to sustainable energy. They're not even talking about cars. They're talking about, you know, one of the ways that cars can be part of a broader belief set on how the world is going to be different and better in the future. And they hang their belief statement on that. You know, Airbnbs is also interesting. I don't know how many of you have stayed in an Airbnb. You know, it's a different experience than staying in a hotel. They believe travel is better when you experience it as an insider. You know, staying in someone's house or apartment or beach condo or whatever it might be, it's a different deal than being in a hotel, and it really captures the belief. And that belief allows them to do a broad range of things in the travel space beyond just renting out, you know, apartments or homes to vacationing people. But anyway, it's interesting to see a couple of different ways of how you can talk about the how. And I'm curious, with the brands that some of you are building, have you thought about your how? Have you taken the brave step of trying to actually articulate it and write it down and tell it to people?
I know Sarah has.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that, Sarah?
I do want to. I'm just kind of absorbing and listening right now. But yeah, I'm happy to talk about Cirilla and what we're doing.
Do it.
What would you like me to share? Just
Well, how about your beliefs or how you communicate your beliefs or mission statement, anything related to messaging about your brand?
Yeah, well, with our new branding, we also have these unique sun rays on each flavor. And so all of the fonts and the colors and the logo is really intentionally created to inspire joy. And so what our brand really stands for is inspiring joy and allowing people to tap into their inner power. So nourish your inner power is our tagline. And we really celebrate the uniqueness of every individual rather than, there's a lot of pressure out there to be someone different, to be bigger, better, faster, richer, whatever it is. And so we try to meet people where they're at and just help them take one step closer towards their goals. And a lot of those goals are around health and wellness.
That's very cool. And by the way, I looked at your packaging online. It looks beautiful. It really is uplifting.
Thank you.
I apologize. I have to tell a quick story. I don't know if any of you all have a Ring doorbell camera, but we have one, and we have 2 cats that live outside, and one of them is determined to come inside. So he puts his face in front of the Ring camera, causing me to get up. It's a long way to get there, but it's happened 3 times during this class today. I keep thinking someone's at the door. It's Felix, the cat, looking at the camera, looking at me, saying, "Can I come in yet?" So anyway,
But Dennis, the funny part is you're like sitting in a wheat field. So it looks like you're walking out into the wheat field.
Well, that's actually one of our hay fields. So we have primarily hay on this farm. Used to be cattle at one time, but now it's mostly hay. So that's actually one of our hay fields that I took a picture of, which I really like the picture. So sometimes I use it as my background. So anyway,
That's awesome.
I am always out in the hay field, believe me.
Nice.
Sneezing is what I do.
Well, here, let me jump into, another attribute of a brand. And this is one to think about as you're really strategizing for the long haul with your brand, whether it's the growth that you want to gain or the growth or the value that you want to harness. Should you someday raise capital or sell your brand to a larger partner that can take it even further? This is an example of an acquisition I did with SC Johnson for Sunbum, a wonderful sunscreen brand, very aspirational. And they were competing in the sun care space initially when they were founded. They were only founded 12 years ago. So another very recent one. And I can't share the number of dollars that SC Johnson ended up paying for them, but it was it would melt the wax in your ears to learn how valuable that brand became within those 12 years. And they expanded pretty early into lip care because their working assumption was, hey, if you're out in the sun, your lips are out in the sun too, and they're kind of unique and different in terms of their physiological needs. And that allowed them to expand from the $6 billion market to another $1.5 billion market in the US, addressable market. And then a couple years later, they decided, baby skin is kind of different. Babies' needs are a little bit different than adults' needs. Let's expand it to babies. Well, baby care was almost double the aggregate value of both of the other categories they were in combined. And so that was a brilliant move. Even though their sales weren't great in baby, it gave them a foothold and gave them a larger addressable market. And then they had this brilliant inspiration, beach hair. Who knows more about beach hair than Sunbum? We'll start a shampoo and conditioner line and hair colorants and a whole range of products that once again, by several multiples, expanded their addressable market. Again, small position in that, but lots of room to grow. And when I was looking at this brand from the large consumer goods company looking to acquire them, that significantly expanded the value of this brand for acquisition. because it not only had, of course, the sun care market, but it had all kinds of arms and legs to grow more broadly, both internationally, geographically, as well as into additional adjacent markets within the personal care space. So it's just an example. Think about this as you're building your brand. Sarah, as you're building your drinks brand. Lisa, as you're building your brand around gelatos. The Brandon, your drinks and music brands. Where can you expand beyond the places that you're initially playing, and sort of grow your brand to be capable of doing that expansion at some point when you're ready for it, or when your passion and energy is ready to go there, because it gives you this additional space that you're almost reserving for your brand to be able to grow into within adjacent markets. And then one note of warning, not all brands are extendable to all areas. This was a notable disaster for the Colgate company. I don't know who thought this was a great idea for them to get into frozen dinners. And they had a beef lasagna that they launched. It actually apparently tasted pretty good. I never tried it, but reputedly it was well designed, but it was the wrong brand. In fact, for 6 months after this brand's launch, their toothpaste sales dropped by over 25%. They tanked. It was a corporate disaster. Consumers were worried there was tomato sauce in their toothpaste. They didn't know what to think. So it not only botched their launch and burned a whole lot of money getting that product out that didn't sell, but it also damaged their core brand in their most valuable franchise market. So you got to really think through where your brand can extend to, and be cautious about taking it to places that it doesn't have permission to go. And my final comments, just to begin to wrap up, are, why do we need new brands? We've got so many brands in the world today. And these are just a couple of examples of where new brands are helping to meet new emerging demand. I mean, Impossible Foods is a great example. That category didn't exist 10 years ago. There was no consumer interest. In fact, I would argue that there was anti-consumer interest. How many of you remember protests 15 years ago against Frankenfoods and genetically modified ingredients in foods? What do you think artificial meat is? It's totally 100% genetically modified Frankenfood. Talk about a swing in consumer demand and interest, and the branding around being able to bring a product like this to market. Hard to do with the traditional meat company brand. Johnsonville sausage would have a really hard time doing some of the plant-based meat product launches without some real careful work around their brand. EOS was an interesting example in the lip balm category. They went into, a very social media driven, celebrity endorsement driven business model. It would have been totally inauthentic for Burt's Bees to have done that, for example, because that's more of a natural, authentic Burt living in his turkey coop up in Maine in a forest. He couldn't have done this, but there was a place in the world for people that wanted something where their lip balm could be a fashion statement. And EOS was a new brand that was created to address that. Bottom left, who can forget the viral video for Dollar Shave Club? And they came out and were part of the initial wave that Harry's also rode on, kind of reacting to the bigness and the overbuiltness of Gillette. They came up with a great direct-to-consumer model, $1 a month. Our blades are great. And bottom right, The Honest Company, talking about how, hey, so many consumer products we have for our children, for our homes, aren't fully addressing safety, and they're making that their big thing around Jessica Alba's personal story and her building the company to help her children and her family. So these are just a few examples. Your brands that you've already talked about here this morning, I think, are additional great examples. You're meeting different needs that the world does not have good solutions for today, and you're helping to bring them to the table. And last but not least, big companies often rely on new brands finding a new need that they just don't see because they're focusing on their big successful brands. And some of them, Unilever is a great example, actually make it a strategy to periodically acquire new brands that are demonstrating that they have understood a new need, they've found a great way to meet it, they've built a great brand to address it, and have gained the trust and confidence of consumers in fulfilling that need. And they're like, rather than taking the risk and the expense of building it from scratch, they bought Ben and Jerry's back in 2000. They bought a number of hair care brands in 2010 that were very well established. Seventh Generation in 2016 to help get them more down the road of sustainability, which they felt was a corporate priority. And they thought Seventh Generation was both a good business and also a good way to teach the parent company more about how to drive in a direction that they wanted to go in. 2017, they bought a couple of Korean K-beauty brands that were becoming very popular. And their theory was, a company based in England and the Netherlands probably wasn't going to have the best insights into K-beauty. Why not buy brands that were already demonstrating success and help to build that out and scale that into the global phenomena that was driving into. In 2021, just a year and a half ago, they bought Paula's Choice, a brand that was built 25 years ago. And Paula, when she built that brand, she was convinced there wasn't enough integrity in reporting on ingredients, on safety of ingredients, and she was really going to focus like a laser beam on that. Built that brand over 25 years, a great story, and Unilever decided, what, this is a really important growing element of the personal care business. We want in. And rather than try to build it themselves, they bought a brand that had the credibility and had demonstrated their ability to deliver against that. And whether it's this year or a future year, hopefully one of you will have the opportunity, if that helps, is part of your hopes and dreams and desires, to be purchased by a company that can authentically continue to stay true to your brand, expand and grow it and scale it with capabilities that might be greater than what you have, to bring it to more consumers around the world today and to change the world for better. So those are some of my reflections on consumer brands and the power of them. I'm so excited by the brands that you all are building, and I hope this has been helpful. If people have a couple of minutes, we can stick around and continue to talk. But I hope you've learned something that was useful to your work in building your brands, and I'd be happy to follow up with anybody that has specific questions or anything I can help with.
Oh, fantastic. I have to clap.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Here's
you.
here's the problem with having Andy come on. I just become incredibly enthused about doing a brand, and I run around the house and try to find the cat and say I'm gonna a brand that stops the cat from looking into the Ring camera. No, I'm kidding around, but Andy, thank you so much. You have forgotten more than I know on this subject, and I encourage everybody to, and I'll post Andy's contact information so you can bother him.
Please do.
But he's it's really helpful, and I think sometimes, especially when you're doing everything yourself and you're a small entrepreneur and you're like barely hanging on some days, just realize that there is a bigger picture out there, and Andy is witness to that mentality and that approach and that awareness, and so if you ever start to feel overwhelmed, come back and watch this video on our YouTube channel. Or we have Andy several times. We have iterations of this, so you can follow the progress of his growth in this arena as well. But anyway, I'm going to open it up. Anybody want to ask any questions at this point? Okay. One of the things, Andy, that I'll bring up is, do you have any suggestions or thoughts on fundraising for brands? These folks are not necessarily looking to raise money, but I think it might be something that in the future they might be considering. Any observations you have on that?
Yeah, it's a tough game, and you have to be really careful to maintain control of your company, and yet be able to get the kind of capital that will help you with specific goals, whether it's retail expansion, production capability, whatever it might be. the environment, I will just say the environment is getting more challenging right now, with interest rates having gone up. A lot of the venture capital money is getting a little bit more cautious. They're still looking for places to invest. You know, the most overused phrase in the planet is dry powder. There's a lot of money still on the sidelines, but that money comes with a lot of strings attached. So I'm not an expert in startup funding, but there's one company I'm on the board of. They have been extraordinarily successful in writing grants. You know, they're a technology-based company, and they've written a whole bunch of grants to the National Science Foundation. They're based in New York State. State of New York has a surprising number of grants for companies like theirs. And the money's sitting there waiting to find a deserving company that could use it to advance some initiative that the state of New York has an interest in. And the beauty of that kind of fundraising is it's good money. It doesn't dilute the company. There's no control obligations that are seated. You know, nobody gets a seat on a board that gets to look over your shoulder and hassle you. You know, so to the extent that you can find, you know, good money in that way, there may be pockets of North Carolina that have funding available for companies like yours that you may not be aware of. You know, we're blessed with, I think it's Jenny that comes from UNC, it's entrepreneurial program. Dennis, you've got connections all over the place. You know, I would really mine the sources of good, clean money that's local before going the route of venture capital or some of the capital markets that they're out there. But you know what? Their terms are brutal. And the amount of money they'll give you versus the amount of your control that you have to give up is sometimes very painful. And the other thing that you really need to keep in mind is the money you need in 2023 may not be the last money you need. And so if you cut a deal that gives 40% of your company to a venture capital firm, and then in a year and a half, you need another chunk for, you know, expansion of production or whatever it might be, you don't have much room left before you've lost control of your company. And so think the long game if you're even considering going down, you know, angel investor, venture capital route, and just be very careful, be very stingy about giving away parts of your company, because it's kind of like giving away parts of yourself. It's really hard to get back, and it's going to constrain your future flexibility. So make sure you really mind your other options, whether it's friends and family, whether it's state of North Carolina support, or, you know, anything specific, or even grants from universities or companies that are trying to help encourage companies to get started and thrive within the state of North Carolina. Those would be the places I'd go with passion before I went the venture capital route.
Yeah. I think some of you may know Jack Nails, who participates in our class. He's a Department of Agriculture guy, and he has a wealth of knowledge on grants in particular, often from USDA, that are very specific to some of the branding type stuff you guys are doing, food related, agriculture related, you know, consumer brand type stuff that you know, it's not like the deep research. Some of this stuff requires some of the science, you know, like life sciences and so forth. So Jack's a good resource for that kind of insight as well. All right.
That's a great question. I wish you all so much luck. I'm going to be looking for your brands in the marketplace, and just be cheering all of you on. And if I can be of any help, please feel free to reach out.
Well, thank you, Andy. And thanks everyone for coming in today on a slightly different time frame. I'm very proud of everybody who figured that out. You're in a unique position. Not everyone figured that out. So anyway, thank you, Andy, once again. And we'll see everyone tomorrow for our 5-minute marketing or website makeover, which I think is a can't miss session. So see you all tomorrow.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Sounds great.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks so much.